I'm Zibby Owens, and you're listening to the award-winning podcast, Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Thanks so much for listening to my podcast. If you like what you hear, please follow me on Instagram at Zibby Owens and also at Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Thanks so much for listening. Enjoy it. I'm so excited to discuss my sponsor today, which is Page One Books, because my summer book bundle is ready on pageonebooks.com. And the bundle that I've put together includes 3 books that I picked, Montauk by Nicola Harrison, More Myself by Alicia Keys, and I Miss You When I Blink by Mary Laura Philpott, all of which have been on this podcast here. It includes a Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books beach tote, a cute little library card pencil / cosmetic case, and a water bottle for staying hydrated, plus a little thing of sun lotion. So go to pageonebooks.com, page one with the number 1, so pageonebooks.com, and check out my Page One Books summer bundle. Buy it as a gift, a housewarming, if you actually go somewhere, or just give it to yourself. Everybody needs a treat. We've had a long spring. pageonebooks.com. Welcome to the 3rd day of my July book blast. This is Beach Reads Wednesday, and I'll be releasing lots of episodes this week and next to get all these great beach reads out, and also books that have come out during the quarantine or books that I think you just need to read at this time. And I just don't want you to miss these authors for any longer. So anyway, here are some great beach reads. Each episode this week will have a book that I think you should curl up with and read if you ever find the time. Aimee Agresti is a novelist and entertainment journalist. A former staff writer for Us Weekly, she penned the magazine's coffee table book, Inside Hollywood. Her work has also appeared in People, Premiere, DC Magazine, Capital File, The Washington Post, Washingtonian, The Washington City Paper, Boston Magazine, Women's Health, and The New York Observer. Her latest book is called The Somerset. Aimee has made countless TV and radio appearances, dishing about celebrities on the likes of Access Hollywood, Entertainment Tonight, E!, The Insider, Extra, VH1, MSNBC, Fox News Channel, and HLN. The author of, as I mentioned, The Somerset, also Campaign Widows, and the Gilded Wings trilogy for young adults. She graduated from Northwestern University with a degree in journalism and lives with her husband and 2 sons in the Washington, D.C. area.
Hi!
Hi!
I'm so excited to meet you. I'm such a fan, as I told you. Like, I just love what you're doing, and I'm so grateful as a reader even. Like, I love the interviews that you do so much, and it's just so exciting to get to meet you and be on, so thank you.
Oh my gosh, it's my pleasure. And by the way, when I was reading some of the blurbs, I feel like I know everyone who blurbed your book.
I think you do. I know. I got so lucky. I have like the world's best blurbers. I mean, oh my gosh. I know you've talked to all of them.
Yeah, I think so.
They're all amazing. I got so lucky that they took the time to do that, because they are like some busy women, those amazing writers who were kind enough to read. And I'm always so grateful when, I mean, I always feel bad asking for blurbs, because I know everyone's in the middle of their own work, and to switch gears and read somebody else's and then have to, write something about it is like hard to do. So I'm always grateful. But yeah, you've got great people on all the time. So I was like, oh my gosh, I was lucky to get those ladies.
Oh, stop. So The Somerset, congratulations on the launch and everything. It's so exciting. Tell listeners what The Somerset is about.
That's right. The Somerset is about an actress named Charlie Savoy, and she was a Hollywood it girl and an ingenue in her early 20s, and then she flamed out and disappeared from Hollywood. And when we meet her at the beginning of the book, she is almost 40 years old, and she's been in sort of a legal scrape, and she's forced to go back to the Summer Shakespeare Theater where she got her start as a teen, and where her ex, Nick, is the artistic director. So, drama and hilarity ensue as they spend this summer together. But, it's about a Hollywood actress, but I really think it's a universal book, because it's about, old friends, old flames, old rivals, and second acts. And I think that's something that a lot of us can relate to, especially sort of the age that I am, like early 40s, and a lot of us are sort of reinventing ourselves when we become moms or when we get to this stage in our lives. And I think it is sort of a universal story.
Totally. All about reinvention in your 40s.
Right? Yeah.
And what inspired you to write this book?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, I got my start in magazines and entertainment journalism, and I was at Premiere Magazine right out of college. That was a great movie magazine, and it was just such a great place to be. Like David Foster Wallace wrote for them back in the day and things. And then most recently, I was a writer at Us Weekly. So I've always really loved the entertainment world. But, it's funny. I think the seeds were really sort of sown early for this book because back in high school, I grew up in this very small town, Olney, Maryland, outside of DC. And we were really lucky to have this great theater there. And it was like a professional theater. They cast all the actors from New York and they came in. And the really cool thing about this theater was that the actors stayed on the grounds in their own residence together. And, I've always had an overactive imagination, as novelists tend to have. And even back then in high school, I was like volunteering there, always off stage, way off stage. But I would volunteer and I was always thinking, the actors were always like, a lot of the times they were young and beautiful and living together. And I was like, ooh, well, who's friends and who's enemies and who's getting together and what's going on? I always wanted to know. So I think that sort of has always been in my head a little bit. And I really loved being around that world. I think it's really inspiring. My mom back then was in charge of the welcoming committee for the actors, which was so much fun. So she would enlist me to help her throw parties when they arrived. And we would like bake them cookies and have lunch for them and make little baskets for their rooms and stuff. So I was always kind of like watching everybody wondering what was going on, how they were getting along.
What was it like writing for Us Weekly? I always read those articles with so much interest and intrigue, but almost feeling guilty about it, right? Because there I am just trying to pry into people's private lives. Tell me about that. That's so interesting.
Oh, it was so much fun. It was a great place. And I always said, at least, back in the day when I was there, the stories really were true. We had a very solid fact-checking department and things, but it was a lot of fun, I mean, I really, got my start sort of at Premiere. And back then when it was all really new to me, it was like extra exciting because I was like 22, had just come out of school. And because I was sort of that age, I was often interviewing the up and comers, which was really cool. And sometimes they would be like my age and in their first thing. And you sort of are talking to them before they're famous, before they know they're famous. And they're really real and genuine. And you're never going to get them that way again. And that was always really fun for me because then I feel like, you spend a little time with someone. And even if you don't talk to them again after that, you kind of always want to follow their career and see where it goes. And with that, some of them went straight to the top, and some of them took sort of more winding paths to success. And then some of them hit road bumps that were really rough. And it always made me wish that we actually were friends, that I could call them and be like, are you doing okay? What's going on? I saw what happened, but you can't. And so you sort of feel like, you feel this connection from the moments that you sort of spent interviewing them about their life, but then this huge disconnect because then they're gone and you can't get back in touch with them. And to sort of watch these different paths that they took, I thought was just, really kind of eye-opening for me. But it was fun because I got to be back then a party reporter, which I didn't even know was a job back then. I felt like I should be paying them. And I would, go to the premieres and stand on the red carpet and ask the questions and then go to the movie afterwards and then go to the party and drink champagne and talk to the stars again and go home and write a story. And it was a job and it was great, So it was a lot of fun. And I tried to get all of that excitement and passion about Hollywood and that industry into the book because I think we all love it, right?
Yeah, for sure. Guilty pleasure.
Yeah.
So how did you go from that? I know you've written 3 YA books and 2 novels. So how did you switch from that into writing books?
Well, I always wanted to write books. I've always loved books. My mom's a librarian. So I grew up reading everything in sight and just living at the library and things. And you know how it is. It's one of those things that you feel like I didn't know anyone who was a novelist. It felt very, very unattainable kind of thing. And I'm a practical girl. So I love writing. So I went into journalism and, went into magazines and things, but I was always writing on the side. And then, when we left New York at one point, because my husband's in politics and we sort of came back here when Obama came to town and things, then I was like, well, I was freelance writing. And I thought, I had written a novel before that. Cause you know how these paths of a novelist, it's like everyone has that one that's tucked in a drawer that will never see the light of day, but you learned how to write a book from it, So I have that book that, is the book that I wrote that got me my agent, who I'm so grateful to have found so long ago. But it just wasn't the book that was going to be published, it just didn't work out. But I kept going. And when when we moved back here to Washington from New York, I was like, I'm going to try this again and write something very different than the book I had written before. And that just happened to be that time, everything is timing, right? And it happened to be that time when everybody was reading, grownups were reading Twilight and Hunger Games and all of that. And I just I always tend to write the book that I most want to read at any given time. And everyone was reading that. And I was having this real feeling of I'd like to try writing the kind of book that I would have loved as a kid because I read so much and I always loved mystery and romance and adventure and strong girls. So, I kind of cobbled together all those elements, and that became that trilogy. And I got lucky. It was the right time for that. It's funny, when I wrote that book, the first in the trilogy, Illuminate, I had the idea for Campaign Widows, which was my first adult book, at the same time. And I was debating which one to go with first. But, I just gotten back to Washington, even though I'm from here, and the city changes with each administration. I felt like I wanted to kind of live in the city more with the Obama years and really see how that was going to change the city before writing it. And so I went with a trilogy instead, and I'm glad that I did that. But it was funny. I had them both, and I was like, which one do you go with first? It's hard to decide, But I got lucky. I'm very grateful. Anytime a book gets published, you feel very lucky. It's a crazy business, as you know, right?
I know. It's like amazing. I want to do like a whole nother show. I mean, I'm just making this up, of all the people out there who wrote books and they can't be on the show because they never got published. Or maybe they're maybe they're just not quite here yet, right? Like they've written their first book or their second book, and they don't, I just feel like this obligation to tell people, like, you have to write at least a novel or two before you can even contemplate having success. It seems like everybody has to write them. You have to have the ones in the drawer. So
it's
I don't know.
True. And I feel like they're the ones that get you to the one that actually works out. So it's all worthwhile. I always like writing because I feel like it's something that you get better at as you go. It's not like at some point you have to stop doing it. Like, if we had decided to be gymnasts or something, like you'd have to probably stop that at some point. But writing, you could keep going.
Totally. You can just keep getting better. Get better and better. So what are you working on now?
Now I'm supposed to be writing the next book. I've not been the best multitasker in quarantine here, So yeah, I know what the next book is, and I'm mapping it out. I'm a big outliner, so I always feel like I need to have the whole thing mapped out before I actually start writing, because then the writing process actually goes pretty fast. So I'm sorting out the pieces right now, and I've got like the major stuff, but I have to actually just sit down now and start the writing. But yeah, again, not the best multitasker. I think you need to write a book about time management and multitasking, because I would be the first in line to get that, because I don't know how you juggle all the things that you do. I'm always very impressed and inspired by you.
Thank you. I don't know how I do it either. Every day is different. I don't know. I feel like I don't do a lot of things very well. I'm cutting a lot of corners these days. And, as we were talking about before, like I've had to email my kids' teachers a couple of times, like more times than I can admit, being like, we missed this, or I'm sorry about that. Or, I do the best I can. I don't know. I just, and I do things really quickly, and I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I'm impressed. I know. And I'm also glad to not be the only one who's emailed the teachers a bunch of times and been like, we're doing the work. I promise. We're just thinking we'll be on the call, I think.
Oh my gosh. Well, you've already given like such amazing advice to everybody, I feel like. Is there anything else you would want to say to aspiring authors aside from everything else?
Oh, that's great. I always say just keep writing, because it's true. It's like you feel like when you're writing and you're not having the success and the luck and having people pick it up and publish it and stuff, you feel like, how do I keep going? But you just never know when it's going to work out, and you're getting better all the time. So just keep writing. That's like the one thing I feel like we have control over in the publishing world, is just to keep writing and keep making new work. And then you just never know what's going to be the one that strikes a chord with somebody. So keep going.
We talked at the beginning about sort of reinvention in your 40s. How do you feel that you have reinvented yourself in the last couple of years?
Oh, I love that. I feel like the biggest thing is when you become a mom, it changes everything about how you live your life and do your work and everything. And it's definitely, that has made me a more efficient person for sure. And it's also forced me to sort of figure out how to do my work the best that I can when I can do it. Like everything has changed about the way that I work. I mean, I used to think, like on the first book that I wrote, I thought I'm kind of a fast writer. I wrote this pretty fast, but no, I just spent every possible minute and didn't need to sleep much. You know what I mean? It's like, and now like I used to have really useful like nighttime hours writing, and I found it very peaceful. And now it's like, I mean, I don't know how you are with your kids, but as soon as I have all this adrenaline right before their bedtime, and then as soon as they go to bed, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to write all these pages. And then I like fall asleep, often with my laptop. I mean, sometimes I fall asleep with my laptop on my lap. I'm like sitting in bed, which is you're not going to get work done. But I'm like, I can work in bed. And the laptop falls on the floor. Like I've had everything happen. So now I try to sit down to write when I know that I can, my head is really there and I can crank some things out. Because for me, it's always most important to end your writing time excited to go back to it, rather than hitting like a word count every day. So I think like I've learned a little bit about how to change just my writing habits and my work habits to be more efficient. But yeah, I think we're learning every day as moms and as writers.
Yeah, totally. I totally agree. Well, thank you. I'm so glad to have spoken to you, Aimee, and I hope I get to meet you in person sometime. And I feel like I need a picture of, maybe I'll take a picture of my phone of your amazing backdrop here. It's like insane.
Thank you.
Anyway, I think you did a great job with the technology, and it was a pleasure to talk to you. So.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This is so exciting for me. And thank you. Keep doing all the amazing stuff that you're doing. We're so grateful as authors.
Thank you. Okay, have a great day.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks for listening to a Beach Reads Wednesday episode from my big July book blast. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you've enjoyed getting to know some of these amazing authors. Thanks again for listening to my podcast, Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. If you liked this episode, please follow me on Instagram at Zibby Owens and at Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books, and sign up for my mailing list at zibbyowens.com so you can always hear about the latest things I'm up to. Thanks a lot. Thanks so much to Page One Books for sponsoring today's episode. I hope you'll all check out my summer beach bundle at pageonebooks.com. Thanks so much to Steve and Ryan at Texture Sound for the sound editing. And thank you to Morning Moon Productions for providing this fantastic intro and outro music. Thanks for listening. You could always email me at zibby@zibbyowens.com.